And you had talked about, oh, she's not reaching out. Well, it's not just a one-way street. Like, the only person in the plot of WandaVision who is attempting to reach out to her is Monica.
Collean O'Brien is a certified Theta Healing practitioner and instructor. She uses the Theta Healing technique to help others reprogram their limiting beliefs to better support the reality that they are creating. I must give you fair warning that unless you're ready to laugh along with us and to raise your vibration into joy, you should stop this podcast now, because the rest of this podcast is celebrating joy.
Doctor Strange was my introduction into the MCU.
Yeah.
And, this is why they get big name talent to come and be the leads for these movies, because the fact that Benedict Cumberbatch was in this movie was what got my butt in a seat. And, well, honestly, it wasn't a butt in a seat because I saw it on a streaming service, but you know what I mean.
You were sitting somewhere.
Yeah, true. I was sitting somewhere. And honestly, I was taking this upper level Theta Healing course when I was watching it, on my downtime, because it was like a couple days course. And, so he's there manipulating time in the Doctor Strange movie, and manipulating time was one of the things that we were learning in that class. And so I literally said to the screen, "Oh, Stephen, you don't need an Infinity Stone to do that."
What do you need this necklace for? Come on.
Exactly. And who was I, right, to be like, oh no, I know how to do that without straining and yeah.
I'm way cooler than you, buddy. Superhero.
So, but you were saying before we hit record that you haven't seen Infinity War and Endgame. You watched the first two Avengers, but you didn't watch the second.
No, I watched them, but I complained the whole time. To myself, to my cats. We were in the room together. That was it. I was like, this is a dumb
All right, so
movie.
now I want to know what's your beef? What is your beef with these two movies?
So my beef with them is we have people with superpowers that extend beyond physical might. And that's all we ever do. We just hit each other over the head with a bigger car, or we send you to space with our bigger fist. It's like, you are so smart. Nobody used their brains in either of those two movies. So I was really annoyed with them. I felt like the fighting didn't get elevated to... It's one of the things I love about the WandaVision conversation that we're going to have, is that her conception of herself, her use of her powers, it's all part of her brain, right? And she understands that she is her mechanism. She's in control of her mechanism. And I felt like, just no matter what happened in that stupid movie, we just had to build a suit for the guy who is a doctor and is brilliant and should be able to come up with a better answer than all of those answers. And we got to have a suit so he can be the Hulk. I mean, come on, you are just dumb now. So I really didn't go with them on those.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing that I think you're missing, and yes, it's a big, CGI slugfest. I will admit to that.
It was a slugfest. But every time we turned around, we were just killing each other. It's like, and you suck at it.
Well,
you don't even kill the guy. Like, you try a million times and you don't even kill him. And you either you are better or you are. Let's get on with it. Okay, go ahead. The reason.
No, I mean, the reason they lost was because they weren't working as a team. Like, they had fallen apart.
Yes, they had fallen apart.
There's that line at the beginning when, they're bringing Banner up to speed about what had happened with Civil War leading up to that. And he's like, oh yeah, the Avengers broke up. And he's like, the Beatles, like the band isn't together anymore. And so they were divided, and that is why they lost to Thanos. Yeah. And I loved how it was such a devastating loss. Like some of the best episodes of Doctor Who, for example, are when the Doctor loses. And we had gotten on this big high of like, oh, it's, you just expect the heroes to win. And they didn't win at the end of Infinity War.
Yeah.
And, that I thought was really great. But yeah, I'll admit, there's a lot of fight scenes in it. And, if that's not your thing, it's not your thing, right?
No,
I don't watch big car chase explosion movies either.
No, I do. So I do think you're bringing up an important point. And that is that the decisions are altered because there isn't the power of all of the players together. And I think that's a really important point. And I think that's an important point when it comes to just being in the world, is that your world's falling apart, right? That reconfiguration phase is always messy, and you do lose sometimes, and you do have to ask yourself, what am I going to do about that, even when the loss is devastating? So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up messy because, gosh, WandaVision is so messy. Chaos in general is kind of messy. Creation and destruction. There's some spillover. There's people around her that are being affected. But I was always struck in watching this about her lack of a social support system. Like, she really has lost everything. Like, she doesn't even have like a friend to help out. She really is all alone. It really is all on her.
I think that feeling is super valid during loss, that even when you do have support systems, it just doesn't feel like it. It feels like nobody understands who you are, so that feeling of like, I want to reach out to you is gone. So even if she had 10 friends, right, that you still are going to arrive on that plot of land and have to face your moment all by yourself. And I think this is the real key. The difference between I am in my regular life, right? If we don't do any spiritual work before we get to the moment of crisis, then when you get to the moment of crisis, it's really hard to reach for something bigger than yourself, And so she does it in a very interesting way, right? Because she becomes something bigger than herself.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and it's something that was inborn in her. It's something that they emphasize very subtly when they do that flashback. I think it's in episode 8, when it's really Agnes torturing her, honestly, making her relive these points in her life. But that she always was a witch. When that bomb hit, she did that probability hex on it so that it wouldn't go off for 2 days. And she hadn't learned how to be a witch beforehand. And of course, which just drives Agnes crazy. She's like, I'm following the rules. I've been studying this for hundreds of years, and you just do it? Like, that's not fair. So, she's got this inborn power, and it really, her experiences, both through the flashback and through the events that we were watching with her in WandaVision, help her develop that and amplify that. But she's also, and you had talked about, she's not reaching out. Well, it's not just a one-way street. Like, the only person in the plot of WandaVision who is attempting to reach out to her is Monica.
Yeah, that's right.
And Monica only really knew her as a file.
Yeah.
Yeah, she knew Captain Marvel. And did you notice that little subtle when they mentioned Captain Marvel's name and she just abruptly changed the subject? She's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about Captain Marvel. I'm curious as to what happened between the two of them, because that's going to be a fun thing to explore.
I know. So interesting. Future movies. So in the original comics, it's quite explicit about what those powers are. So it'll be interesting to see how they get developed in the movie versions of it. But yeah, so she essentially gets scrambled in the entrance process. And so this is a great metaphor. That scrambling creates superpowers, right? So I think
well, they literally say it's rewriting her DNA,
right.
And I mean, with theta healing and a number of other, which I'm certified in, but there's a number of other modalities that activate your DNA, or say that they're working energetically on the DNA. So it's fun to see science be like, oh yeah, like we're totally scrambling your DNA, and Monica also too. She kind of doesn't care. Like she's very. Like got the blinders on, and I think part of it too is her own grief. She didn't even realize that she had blipped. She comes back. She thought her mom was doing better, and she finds out she had died years ago,
and she missed a year.
She didn't get a chance to say goodbye,
and she missed this. Like she did come back, right? So and she missed a year. So it's like that's really tricky. That is really tricky when we feel like we've missed it. Well,
the blip was 5 years. She missed 5 years of her life.
Yeah, but they said.
Oh yeah. So she died. Yeah, that's right. Her mother died. 2 years. Yeah, a couple years. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so she missed some time period of her mother. Which is really interesting, right? Because people struggle a lot with that in reality. That idea of like, I wasn't there for you in this moment. I wasn't there for you at the end of your life. Now, we could show up our whole lives, right? I mean, as children and parents, and right, and we can show up all those times, but that year or two before someone passes away, particularly if you know that they're close to the door, right? Then people get very upset if they have missed it. If they say, "Oh, I prioritized work and I didn't get to be there during that time period," or whatever. And so that's a really interesting thing, that sort of sense of loss of time that she went through.
Yeah,
everybody goes through, I think. Yeah,
exactly. And then she comes back to work. She gets this crappy assignment. Her mom even grounded her from beyond the grave, it seems. And so when she shows up on the scene of Westview, she's just reckless, right? Like she does the thing that they teach you first day of science lab not to do. She touches the thing, right? Like, oh, we already put in a drone. We already put in this little toy drone because we don't know what it's going to do. And then the drone disappears, and then she immediately goes right to, oh, well, let me touch it. I'm like, Monica, what are you doing, man? Like, so it's just totally reckless. I mean, I appreciate it from a plot perspective because that's that's how a lot of superheroes get it, like lab accident stuff, like, all right, let's make some stuff happen here, right? But then she goes through the second time, again, completely reckless. Oh, they tried to use that big truck thing and that didn't work. And then she's like, oh, I'm going in. I'm going to do it myself. Now, the thing that I love about that scene is it talks about that superpower that she has of just her own willpower. And as she's going through the barrier, she's being split apart into the different versions of herself. And then it's the words that she remembered from Captain Marvel saying that she was the toughest kid. And that's how she wills herself, she pulls herself back together and gets through into the other side. And a lot of times we got to do that. We got to pull ourselves together. But that I think was a danger that she stuck herself into, honestly. But, again, she's also doing it to reach out to Wanda, because that's the first thing she does is she goes to Wanda's house and she's like, hey, Hayward's after you. Don't let them turn you into a villain. Like, I'm here. I'm on your side. And what does Wanda do? She pushes her away, which is a very, very typical response when you're in that crisis mode.
Right. So one of the things that I love about WandaVision is that it is confusing and it is comforting all at once. And I feel like that is a really significant part of grief, is that it's totally confusing. Everything's new, but it all feels really super familiar. And so this idea of like her using these sitcoms, this comfort for her, this place of comfort for her, which is also a place of comfort for me. So that's, I really felt drawn to that to say, okay, I'm going to use television to try to understand myself a little more deeply, to try to experience something that I want to be having at this moment, to be able to explore what could I have had? What am I having, right? So one of the things that we don't really see in this movie is that is as real. We do see it, but it's sort of commented on in a very negative way. But that experience is as real as the reality that we're in.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, she's literally creating it. We all kind of go, have those daydreams and retreat to those safe spaces or imagine even our past or our future. Like, well, how would I have wanted that to play out instead? We do that all the time, but because we spend the most of the time with other people collectively agreeing to this reality that we've all sort of said is what is quote unquote the real world, we don't get labeled as being crazy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then in our world, in our regular world, people typically, when they want to have an advanced spiritual experience, they look to drugs or to other ways to get there, right? And they say, well, I went and I did this way of going deeper into my spirituality, but in reality, we can do that right on our own, right? And we do it. I mean, some of us do that, right? And that's as part of our world, that we can move inside of time in different ways than a lot of people, or that we can move within realities and space in different ways than other people. And so, but in that same way, it's not actually that much different than what other people can do, right? Because other people can do this. It's just about willingness and ability to know yourself and desire to go there and let yourself be all that superpower. So she becomes, Wanda becomes that, right? She becomes this extra piece of herself and has no knowledge. Want to talk about that?
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that I loved about at least my experience of watching this, because I watched it as it was released, so you had to wait a week between each episode, and you only got it a half hour at a time, and so everybody was like, what did I just watch? And people were theory crafting on the internet and doing reviews and trying to predict what was going on and what was going to happen next. So, and in real life, you don't have all of the answers at any one moment in time. So I sort of loved that, in that we could really walk through her world and try to figure out what was going on at the same time she was. As the time they get around to like the Halloween episode, like after the kids are born and the Halloween episode, things are starting to break down because she can't control everything. She can't control the kids, and things are starting to go a little haywire, and Vision's starting to become more self-aware, and and again, that'll happen in real life too. People will challenge you.
Or dead brother shows up. It's like, I don't know. I'm definitely not doing this, right? But, girly, you got more power than you know.
Exactly. So when stuff gets really weird, she's still trying to, sort of be in that denial of pulling it all together. Like, no, this is what I really want. This is what I really chose. And then, other people's desires and free will are creeping in and challenging her. And, what is that breaking point really? But one could argue that the breaking point was what started it all, which again, we don't actually find out until towards the end, when she's at that property and she just, and I think we've all had that, we get to a point where we just say enough. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not living this way anymore. I am going to be the catalyst for change. I am going to create something different for me. And we don't necessarily have to go to the depths of grief to be able to do that. But often people will have that turning point when they are in an emotional crisis, when so many things have broken down for them. And again, it's TV, it's drama. It was really fun to watch.
Oh, it's a blast. It's such a great way. I mean, you and I have talked a little bit about this, but I had so much reference to theater and television and movies and common reference with my late husband. And then he's gone, and there actually, I don't really have anybody else in my life that speaks to me in this way. So for me to be able to go back into that world and to be guided to watch something different, which is really interesting, right? Because this wasn't a part of my my reference. I was sort of in that sci-fi space, but not as much in the Marvel comic universe. Although as I just discovered, I had watched a lot of the movies before I decided to go back through them and watch them all in order so that I could be caught up on WandaVision. Which was a blast, by the way. That was a great time.
I'm so glad that you took a chance on this show when I had mentioned it. I was saying that I had conversations with friends of mine after we had decided this was going to be our podcast topic, and I was surprised at how many people hadn't watched it. Because at the time we're recording this, it's been out for a year. It's not a new thing, and so I was surprised at how many people hadn't watched it. And I will admit, the main reason I decided to watch it was because I thought it was going to be homework for Doctor Strange 2. I wanted to be in the loop and up to speed when that movie comes out. And of course, that movie is not in theaters at the time we are recording this. And I'm not sure if I'm going to actually go to a theater to see it. I'm not sure when I'm going to be comfortable going to a theater to watch a movie quite yet, because streaming is so convenient. And of course, WandaVision was a streaming show as well. So, we'll see what I decide, because I know I'm going to come across spoilers. I know I'm going to want to know what happens. But I'm so pleased that you took a chance on it. And because so much of your story when you were talking reminded me of the themes in this show. And, I was like, well, yeah, we could talk about how I use theta healing to talk to people who are, not in physical form anymore. I'm like, we could totally do that, and that would be a fine episode. Or, have you seen WandaVision? You were like, ooh, tell me more. So I love that you had such a good time with it, because I hadn't realized either that you had the shared history of, not watching Marvel movies, or not watching the third act of Marvel movies with your husband, previous to my suggestion to go dive into the world again.
Yeah, I love that, because I had seen some of the movies with him, but that I didn't take them very seriously. So I love that I had homework, because I always take homework very seriously. And I love that I had homework, right? Because then I was like, oh, you got to focus, man. You can't just be like going off to the kitchen and playing in the kitchen. Well, you're going to miss it, right?
You took this homework seriously. You were emailing me. You're like, oh, I watched all these other movies. And I was like, honey, I haven't even seen that movie. What?
I'm doing it, man. I'm doing it.
You dove right in. I love it. I absolutely love it.
And I think you're right that there's, in a lot of ways, there are a lot of similarities to my personal experience in the last year, and to the way that Wanda processed that grief. In that, I really, when my husband died, my house also sold, and so during that time period, I had people helping me, and, things like moving the boxes and all that stuff. But I was in grief. So I was functional for 4 hours a day or whatever it was. And then I was not functional. Right. And that really served me, right? My ability to do that over a lifetime of careers that sort of honed that ability to say, okay, show up, concentrate yourself, focus into this world. For this period of time. And then when it is convenient for you, go into the space of grief. And part of that was finding the comfort that she found in the sitcoms. I also found in television, right? I rewatched Murder, She Wrote, and I rewatched, The Librarians, and I rewatched like all these things that sort of build your faith again in the world that I want to live in, which could be different for every single person, right? But reaching for comfort during grief, I think, is a very important urge and skill, right? Something to do, to be active about. Although I am going to just say, we're going to get around to that talking to people after they've passed thing. So everybody stick with us. So we're coming back around to that. Let's keep talking about Wanda for a while, because I love Wanda.
Yes. And she also, she had to deal with the loss, but then she immediately had to jump back into battle, right? I know Infinity War and Endgame aren't your favorite, but, she had to watch Vision die twice, once by her own hand, right, to try and save the world. And then she got blipped. And if you notice, so many of the people who are, dusting or reacting to people being dusted, they're shocked, they're surprised, they're confused. Her face is the only one that seems relieved. Because it's like, I don't have to feel this way anymore. It's over. Yes, take me away. So then, we can only imagine what it was like when she blipped back 5 years later. To her, it was just an instant later. The body of her lover is no longer where she thought it was a moment ago. And then she's immediately teleported into another battle against the very being who destroyed him. And so she is just, revenge on wheels. She's already super powerful, and then it's on steroids. And I love that, that line of when she's like, you took everything from me. And Thanos goes, I don't even know who you are. Isn't that the worst insult you could ever get, when it's somebody doesn't even acknowledge that, that you're familiar to them at all. It's like, you were this and that's happened. Something in our past, somebody did a significant thing. They may have just made a passing comment. It was nothing to them. And, you're like, my whole life was destroyed because of this moment that you were a part of. And they're like, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember you. That's the worst.
And how significance and focus are connected, right? So for us, what we assign significance to is what we focus on. And I think a lot of times when someone passes, that's what happens with people who are grieving. They focus on the loss because there is the significance is with the person, but they make the confusion to focus on the loss of the person rather than to focus on the person. So
because it's always even the idea of the person, the memory of that person. Even in WandaVision, she manifests Vision,
the whole guy,
from her own power.
Yeah, the whole guy.
And which was a great reveal. Spoiler alert. Hayward tries to set her up she stole Vision's body. It's nope, she created that all on her own.
Yeah.
She is that powerful.
Yeah, and he was someone she didn't expect him to be. So I want to hear the end of that sentence, but I think it's really significant to say she created him out of her memory, out of her mind, out of her superpowerness. And yet he still was somebody who was trying to get out. Right?
Exactly. I love, and that sort of kind of blows my mind a little bit, how he becomes self-aware, because I was about to say he wasn't a robot, when of course he totally is a robot.
He's not a robot.
But she didn't have control over him, right? Originally it was her idea of him was the way that he was showing up. But then he's able to evolve and develop and change, and they even start have a fight with one another, and he's trying to figure out what's going on, and then once Darcy fills him in, and he's just he kind of has that mic drop moment of oh wow, I've really got to help her out, this is a lot, and here I am creating more problems for her. This is not how I want to be. But he does become self-aware and autonomous. So originally he's just the idea of her, but then he kind of takes a life of his own.
He does, and I think that's really significant to the experience that people go through, right? It's that we think things are one way and they're not. We feel like things are in control, but they're not. And I think that experience of walking through deep grief is a lot about either pretending we have control or understanding that life is out of control and not understanding that we're participating in a really super significant way.
Yeah, and it's very scary to realize because there's a couple times she's like, I can fix this. And it's like, can you? And I think he actually did say, like, can you fix this, Wanda? Like, this is a lot. And then ultimately there's that acceptance at the very end when he says, I know you're going to set this right, but not for us. Like, he realizes you're going to have to let us go.
Yeah. So this brings me to an important concept, I think, and maybe I'm skipping ahead, but I want to make sure to bring it out with you, because I think that with Theta Healing, you have access to a very different relationship between time and space than what most people are experiencing in their day-to-day. And the concept that you have to let that go is tough for me, because I have the experience of moving between realities at will, right? So for me, if I want to go live in a reality with my husband, I just go do it. And it's really fun. And I like it. But I'm also present in this reality. So I'm not delusional. I'm not right. I'm not. And so this is the piece, I think, that for Wanda is a tricky thing, is that she's either in or she's out. Is that your experience of this? Is it really one way or the other? Or is there a looser relationship with reality than is sort of represented in that show?
Well, I think it serves the plot too, of there being definitive, it is this way or it isn't this way. And even though, our heroes are kind of in that gray area, right? They're almost anti-heroes. Agnes isn't completely evil, Hayward kind of is evil, but, Wanda, we're rooting for her, but she is, holding a whole town hostage and making them play a part in her fantasy against their will. Here, and even Agnes says, she's like, heroes don't do that. So like there are shades of different
unintentional
even judgments in there of like what right what is morally acceptable for you to have a fantasy and escape, or spend some time across the veil with somebody and have an experience, versus being are you causing harm to yourself or to others by doing that, or doing that too much, or forcing others to really kind of accept that sort of reality if they're not ready to do it. You know what I mean? Because not everybody's willing to accept that is a possibility, and that you can talk to people who, we're all always with us. Not everybody's even ready from a quantum physics perspective to say, like, all time is happening all at once. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about, Wanda, having to really let it all go, right? Again, she was causing harm to other people. That was, and again, she's so powerful. She hasn't had a whole lot of mentorship in terms of how to really even use that power. So, there probably are ways that she could actually have done that without harming other people. But would she still be a target, right? Because, she's a weapon.
It'll be interesting to see, does she decide in the future as she understands her power? Because she understands her power to be the ability at this moment, the ability to manipulate reality. But it'll be interesting to see if she develops as the Scarlet Witch, does she understand her power to be her ability to manipulate her own reality?
Yeah, because they did, they have recently, at least I think one of the trades had reported that Marvel Studios has renewed her contract for another couple years. So there will be other projects that she's going to be involved in, presumably as this character moving forward. And of course, she's playing a big role in the Doctor Strange 2 movies. So yeah, like, is she just going to develop more as a villain and kind of be that big bad that the next team up movie is going to have to face, or is she going to play both sides, really, in terms of, hey, this is what I want. I have the power that I don't have to team up with people if I don't want to, or I don't have to align with whatever you guys want to do or what your reality is. I get to call my own shots. I mean, that's a huge, huge, powerful place to be in.
So she ends this place. She ends in this place that is much more powerful, and she knows it than where she starts. So this reality of pain that she has made to ease the pain in her. She even says, I don't need you to tell me who I am. And I think that's a really important piece of self-development and growth. That there's a certain point at which you may not understand everything about yourself, but you know a lot more than the people around you know.
Yeah, and it's a very powerful, empowering statement. Yeah, and she's, I'm not going to let your concept of me limit me. I'm not going to take on that. I'm going to define who I am. Though we do see in that post-credit scene that she is then doing research in the Darkhold, in that book, the Book of the Damned, reading up on the Scarlet Witch. She wants to learn more about her power. So as much as she doesn't need, Agatha to tell her who she is, and gosh, you can take that to so many different levels, right? Like how many groups in society have tried to suppress other groups of society, particularly women. You're this, you can only do this, So it is a very empowering, way to do. But she also is seeking answers. And I love that seeking and learning knowledge, right? It's one of the things that's great about Doctor Strange. Now, he does have a gift for the mystic arts, but he's learning most of his stuff, through books, through training. Even Agatha, she had been trained, she had to know incantations. So now Wanda, who had this raw power, is also going along that path and be like, okay, where can I find answers? Where can I learn more? Where can I learn more about myself?
This is a great metaphor for spiritual development. You can't tap into these superpowers unless you're willing to learn a little something. And I think that it's important to remember that the learning a little something isn't, knowing yourself and getting more knowledge about what other people have discovered and have figured out a way to do things and have learned something new, and they share that through books and other ways. When you have that opportunity to be able to say, how does this work with me? How do I take this information in and make it a part of me that I want, and that I don't have to take everything, right? Take what you want and leave the rest, right? It's that feeling of learning is still just a piece of the puzzle, and it isn't really speaking to who I am, right? When she says, I don't need you to tell me who I am, what my sense, now this may say more about me than her, but my sense is that what she's talking about is, I know that I am powerful, and I know that I am not going to succumb to your reality. And I know that I will stand strong in who I am. And I know that I can't be threatened by you or even by what I've created, right? So this can't threaten that inner core, even when it's something I don't want. So those are all really interesting things. And to educate yourself beyond that, right, is just an additive to the core who I am, which is bigger than what I know.
And I also love, as a continuation of that scene, we see how clever Wanda is and how much of a quick study she is. Because when Agnes did that, villain monologue talking about the runes and like, oh, hey, this is how I tricked you. Look at how powerful you may be more powerful than I am, but ha ha ha, I trapped you into this. And then Wanda turns it around on her and she does the runes on the hex. And that's how, Agnes is ultimately defeated in this particular battle. So, there is power in learning. And particularly, we saw how intelligent Wanda was to be, and how much of a strategist she was, and how she was able to use all of her experience from, being forged, right, in battle. because that was the other quote, was that, you know, the Scarlet Witch is not born, she is forged. So, you know, she's a really tough woman. By the time that you know, CGI battle at the end in the sky happens, you know, there's a great deal of character beats that happen in that particular battle that I think make it really special and unique to those two characters who are battling. Like, some people will just charge in without a plan and be ruled by their emotions and, you know, not actually think it through. Whereas, and what, you know, we all kind of are a mix. Like, there are sometimes we get super triggered and, you know, are just like, you know what, I just need this to be over the quickest way possible. And then we just, you know, make a decision and then go with it. Whereas other times we may more carefully gather more information and form a plan and a strategy and before we move forward, or not move forward at all, right? Like, freezing is also, you know, there's that fight, flight, or freeze. You know, some people just get overwhelmed and they're like, okay, I can't do anything, and they're just stuck. And they're all, you know, they're all valid responses. Like, we're all, you know, as mammals, are hardwired to default to any of those. So the real superpower, the real hero, is being able to know that that's going on and then choose something different anyway.
And that it's okay to be in any of those phases, but that movement is important, right? That we are fluid, we are moving forward, we are moving in some direction. And even if what's showing up is the same thing over and over again, it's changing to the same thing over and over again. It's not actually static, it just feels static, right? So that is a good point, right? At some point, that WandaVision had to end. Not because it had to end, didn't really have to end. I mean, you know, she could have just said, yeah, I am more powerful now, I'm going back to this thing. But that we all sort of, when we face ourselves, when we do the work of connecting into our emotions, when we say, I'm willing to feel and release all of those kinds of things, we raise our own awareness, that those are the ways in which we get to move through the bad feelings and experience something in the future that might feel good. We don't get that unless we do those things, right?
That's a huge point, is that things are always in flux. Energy is always moving. We're never the same moment to moment to moment. So even if we are mentally recreating the same environment, the same reality, because we keep thinking the same thing and we're just sort of in that cycle of drama or grief or whatever we're kind of stewing in, we're still changing, even if it's, you know, even if we're fighting that change ever so slowly. And so eventually we can make that choice to move out of it. You know, just every experience is informing us and giving us, you know, another tool to open up to another possibility when we're ready, when we want to choose. Sometimes when you get forced into it without being ready, kind of like, you know, the baby bird being pushed out of the nest, like, nope, okay, that's it, it's time. You know, sometimes outside forces will force you to have to change.
Death is like that, right? Loss of all sorts, it's like that. It's life happening. Yeah. And it's a part of life that you don't have control over. You don't have control over somebody else's experience of whether they're staying or going. You have control over your own and how you deal with that.
Exactly. And even that concept of having control over whether or not you're going to exit a physical experience, that's not a concept that a lot of people are willing to accept. They're not willing to accept that power, that they have that much power over, you know, where they're going to be focused physically or spiritually, right? That they would love to blame like God or some other entity, or that's just the way life is. And, you know, they accept that, you know, people age and organs break down and, you know, or stuff happens and that's just the way it is. And it's like, no, like you do have a lot more control and free will over what happens to you. You don't have control over other people's free wills. And I think that's, you know, when stuff starts to break down in WandaVision, you know, particularly with the kids, like they were, you know, she couldn't control them. They were making their own decisions, and things were starting to go haywire. And she was like, oh, whoa, like maybe I don't have a handle on all of this, because there's other people involved here who are exerting their own powers.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, it is my hope that if people don't know that yet, that they got that message with you talking about it, Colleen, because I feel like it is one of the most important steps, is really saying, I am willing to take control, take responsibility for the parts that I have a responsibility for, which is everything that I experience. So that's where the definition goes awry a lot of times, is that people say, which is only this part, and you are a problem, right? But in reality, which is everything that I experience, my discomfort, my happiness, my anger, my taking the things that people say in a certain way, whether they mean it or not, is completely immaterial to deciding how you are going to walk through that moment. Doesn't seem like that's really how we approach it in our particular society, but I do think it's worth taking a real look at yourself and asking those questions. So nice to hear. So now, okay, so I could talk to you for like 18 hours. I'm dying for the mini-series that we do, the podcast mini-series that we're going to develop. I don't know. We'll see. Please, if you're listening at this moment on whatever platform you're on, put a comment and let us know. Do you want more of this really fun nonsense that is entirely true, unless you don't believe it, and then it's a bedtime story? Because we want to do more. We want to do more. So let us know. Do you want to hear more? Before we go, you are a very powerful Theta healer, and Theta healing is an incredible modality. If you could only say one thing to our listeners that relates Theta healing, right, and our reality to understanding this process with WandaVision, is there one thing about WandaVision that you would leave our listeners with?
Well, I would say that, we all create our own reality. And we don't need to use chaos magic in order to do it. There are many different modalities and methods and means of study in order to harness the power that you already have within you, that you're already doing by default, to create the experience that you want. Theta healing, the Theta healing technique, is just one of them. It's the one that I'm certified in, that I've studied, that I can practice, and then I can even certify others in if you want to learn how to do it yourself. But know that you already have these powers, and it's really just finding the best way that works for you to remember them, reawaken them, and to use them to support creating the world you want to live in.
Wonderful. So well said. Thank you so much for being here with me. I just can't tell you how much I love it. Can't tell you how much I look forward to the next one.
Because this was so much fun for me to be able to revisit this. Because as I said, I had watched it when it was first released, so it was nice for me to revisit it and just put a smile on my face. And because it's a brilliant series. Can you tell us what your favorite bits of WandaVision are?
Yeah.
What do you have a favorite line? Do you have a favorite scene? What was your takeaway? Like what do you really holds close to you? Or was it just a wild, entertaining ride? Did you still just think it was homework for Doctor Strange 2, like I did when I started?
I love that. I want to just say to you, because I think that this is one of the ways in which we rebirth ourselves, that I spent my time finding my set point in as close to joy as I could come every day, right? And so that doesn't mean that there's not a roller coaster of emotions. There's absolutely a roller coaster of emotions. But my intention was always to find my way back to satisfaction, to love, to joy, to enjoyment, all of those things. And so you coming along and saying, what if we talk about this thing that gave me this assignment of watching the hours and hours and hours of movies and TV is such a blessing for me, because I think that these are the ways that we learn who we are going to be, right? Because we know who we've been. But a lot of times when you go through that loss, you don't have a sense of who am I without this person, and can I be a full person, and what would I choose? What would I choose? Would I watch that movie? I don't know if I'd watch that movie. I spent more time married to that guy than I did not married to that guy, right? So I don't know. I just did because that's what we were doing. Or was I choosing, right? And so to get this opportunity to choose to be deliberate about who I'm becoming, about what I'm inviting into my world, such a blessing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome, and thank you for taking the suggestion, because I think that's a valid point. That sometimes when we think, oh, who are you going to choose, it seems like it's this big heavy thing, and I got to get it right, and it's going to take a lot of energy. And sometimes it's just like a subtle suggestion. Oh, well, yeah, I'm open to trying that. Let me see where that leads. And you know, it can just be a little thing of breadcrumbs. It can just be a little adventure of maybe a little side quest. Like maybe it's not the thing that's going to change your entire life direction. It's just a little side quest. It's just a little fun thing. And so yes, choice is a huge, huge power. You know, but sometimes you don't know. Like, what am I going to do next? What can I be? I could be anything.
Thank you for being here. When Tim died, I had this t-shirt. I still have it. It's a little stained now, though, so I might have to get rid of it. I had this t-shirt.
No, you don't.
Well, I was thinking
now
about making my own, actually. I want to have, like, you know, one in every color kind of thing. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to invent that because I haven't found it in the world. But it says best day ever. And so I was moving these people. I'd hired these people on Craigslist. It was like, they were not people that knew me before this moment in time, right? And I'm walking around my house packing, clearly not 100% okay, right? Because they would like show me a box and I would go like, oh, excuse me, I gotta go for a few minutes, you know? And they'd be like, oh, should we leave? Or maybe we'll just wait, you know. I'll be back a minute later.
Yeah. Oh, because people don't know. They don't know how to deal with someone who is on the brink of crying,
no.
right? They're like, I don't know you. Do I hug
No, and
you?
she was laughing a minute ago.
Am I going to get slapped? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And she was laughing
it's
a minute
weird.
ago.
People
like,
don't know how to deal with that.
What the hell? This lady is crazy.
Yeah, it makes people uncomfortable. It really makes people uncomfortable. It even makes people uncomfortable who know you.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm walking around with this best day ever t-shirt on, and people are like, kind of like, she's really weird, you know, she's really weird. And so finally, there was this one guy that helped me through the whole process. He just kept showing up, and I needed more help. And, you know, people would fall away and go back to other jobs and whatever, because it was Craigslist. It was like day work, you know. And, but there was this one guy that stuck with me the whole time. And one day he kind of looked at me like, what's with the t-shirt, you know? Like, and I was like, this is the best day ever. And he was like, is it really though? Because like your husband died, you were crying 10 minutes ago. And, you know, and so for me to remember, this is the one we have. This is it. This moment is what we have. And we can look back and we can say, oh, we spent other moments, but they're not the same as the one we're in, because the one we're in is the only one we're truly experiencing. So, best day ever.
Yeah, we only ever have now. Why not make it the best day ever?
Right.
You know, again, you're creating that. I'm labeling it the best, and therefore it has to be that.
That's right.
It can't be anything other than that.
That's
because
right.
that is what I'm calling it.
That's right.
I can't wait to buy your product line of your T-shirts in a rainbow of colors that say "Best Day Ever."
Every color on my shirt. I better get working. I got a lot of things to do, apparently.
Yeah. See, like, you know, you didn't think you were going to have merch associated with this podcast when we started over an hour ago. Like, but here we are.
Nope, an hour is a long time when you spend it with a colleague.
Did it feel that long?
No,
did it feel
like
that
a minute?
long when you're
it
listening?
felt like a minute.
Exactly. It's like we only just hit record.
It's true. It is true. It is true. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. And I'm going to hit stop now. Because there's no other way.
Thank you so much for spending so much time with me.
My pleasure.